Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
Big flakes were falling sideways under the lamp, slow and fat, like the sky was bored, but not done. I'd just clocked out, swapped the company Prius for my own rattletrap Civic in the lot off Oak Ridge. Heater barely worked, radio stuck on 1 a.m. station. My fingers were cold from the wheel, but I was ready to be done. That's when I saw him. Kid, maybe 6 or 7, hunched by the pay kiosk like a dropped glove. Two big green parka with one busted zipper tooth near the top, sleeves past his hands, blue backpack with a stitched-on shark jaw. No adults. No headlights, no noise except the snow chewing on the pavement. I looked around once, twice, then again harder, like maybe someone was just late picking him up. "Hey, bud," I said, walking slow so I didn't spook him. "You stuck?" He nodded, not scared, not crying, just cold, face pale and pinched. "My name's Simon," he said. "I'm 7.5. That half came out like it mattered. And maybe it did tonight. Before we dive in, drop a comment with your city or country. Let's see where everyone's tuning in from. Thanks, and here's the story. He dug in his coat pocket with stiff fingers and handed me an envelope, crumpled like it had been sat on for hours, smelled faintly like soap and desperation. Inside was a photo, grainy, old, me and Colette. I hadn't seen her face in years, but I knew that photo like a bruise. She was smiling. I was dumb and happy and 20-something. On the back, in the same neat print she used to label sketchbooks, "This is your father." I just stood there with my mouth half open, the kid staring up at me like I was supposed to do something next. My stomach dropped like I'd stepped off a ledge. The photo looked like me, before the taxes, before the grind, before I gave up trying to chase anything but gas money. I asked him, "Where's your mom?" And my voice sounded wrong in my own ears. He said, "Hospital." Then his lip trembled. "Brent said she's pretending." Brent. I hadn't heard that name in almost a decade. Brent had shoulders like he was carrying favors owed, and a mouth full of power plays, the kind of guy who smiles while asking you to fail. "Brent told me to wait by the cars," Simon said. "He said someone kind would pick me up. Left like garbage, found like a debt." I couldn't stand there another second. I wrapped my arm around his back and led him across the lot. "We're gonna get warm," I said. "Don't worry." He held onto my hoodie sleeve without looking at me. I got him inside the fleet office, heater whining in the corner, stale coffee stink, broken clock stuck at 10:42. Found an old blanket in the lost and found bin and texted Bryn one-handed. "Don't freak. I've got a kid here. Might be mine." She called me instantly, voice calm, measured. Bryn always lands on her feet. "I'll chase the paperwork. You hold his hand. Warm him tonight, fight tomorrow. Then, bring him home." I looked at Simon, his ears red, hands tucked into his shark bag, and saw something that kicked the air out of me. He wasn't waiting for someone anymore. He was watching to see if I'd stay. I got him into my car, cranked the heat, buckled him in. I tossed the envelope back into the backpack. Father isn't a badge. It's a job you don't clock out of. Not ever. I pulled out of the lot, heading toward our place, with a boy I'd never met but couldn't leave behind. Bryn met us at the door in socks, one of them sliding sideways on the tile like she'd rushed down to beat the buzzer. Paint on her tee, hair clipped up with a pen, the kind of pen she always loses twice before it turns up in the junk drawer. Her realtor blazer was tossed over the arm of the couch, like a client had ghosted her mid-showing. Her face went sharp for half a second when she saw the kid, then softened like she'd already decided what came next. She knelt down so her eyes were level with his. "I'm Bryn. This is our place. It's small, but it's warm." Simon didn't say anything right away. He was staring past her, like the hallway was a museum, and he didn't want to touch anything without permission. Then he said, "Hi," almost too soft to hear, and clutched the shark backpack tighter. She handed him a mug with a faded baseball on the side, cocoa already steaming. "Careful, it's hot," she said. His hands barely fit the handle. Mine shook worse than his, but I shoved them in my pockets and kept my mouth shut. We got him out of his wet socks. Bryn dug out a pair of mine that nearly hit his knees. I grilled cheese like I was in a cooking show with a 5-minute timer. She cut the sandwiches into triangles and laid them out like we were throwing him a lifeline made of carbs and fake cheese. He didn't say much, but when I told him our TV was almost bigger than the couch, he let out a little laugh. Tiny, but it cracked the surface. That sound hit something in my chest I didn't know was still wired. I pulled the envelope out of his backpack and handed it to Bryn. She slid out the photo, ran her thumb across the crease, then looked up at me like she was trying to read the part of the story I hadn't told yet. "There's something else in here," she said, reaching back into the envelope. She pulled out a second folded sheet. Paper soft at the corners, ink smudged at the edges like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. It felt like it had been sweated through. I watched her face while she read it, not her lips, just the slow way her jaw set. She handed it to me. The paper clung to my fingers like it didn't want to be passed along. It was short, no filler, looked like it had been written slow, then rushed to the end. "Read, if he finds you, trust it. I'm sick. Brent says I'm lying. Simon's yours. I know the math. I know your face. I'm sorry for how I left. Colette." I sat down hard on the edge of the armrest. Bryn reached for my elbow and kept it steady. "Colette," I said. She was the kind of first love that scrambles your wiring. Her parents hated me on sight, treated me like furniture from the wrong store, wrong shape, wrong style. I thought if I drove long enough and made enough cash, I'd earn their respect, or at least get my foot in the door. Bryn didn't say anything, just nodded once, eyes still on the letter. She didn't blink fast, didn't breathe shallow, just took it in like a punch she'd already braced for. Simon sat on the edge of the couch, backpack in his lap, feet dangling. He was watching us like a referee who didn't want to throw a flag. I made my voice even. "Hey, buddy," I said. "We're going to see your mom, all right? Maybe tomorrow." He didn't ask anything about it, just nodded once and said, "Do you have cartoons?" "Yeah," I said. "We've got a space show where a robot talks like a grumpy uncle." That got a smile. He settled into the couch with a blanket, eyes drifting closed before the second scene even started. The mug sat empty on the table. His fingers stayed curled around the handle. Bryn and I slipped into the galley kitchen, keeping our voices low. She crossed her arms and leaned against the fridge. "We call first thing," she said. "Hospital, child services, maybe a family lawyer, anyone who can stamp something that says he stays where it's safe." I nodded. My head felt heavier than it should have. "I didn't fight hard enough," I said. "Back then, when Colette left. I thought maybe if I gave her space, she'd come back." "You gave her space," Bryn said, "and someone else filled it with garbage." She didn't say it to blame me, just to be clear. She's good at that, cutting to the truth without drawing blood. I watched the snow slant against the storm window, thick and steady now. My reflection looked older than 34, thinner at the temples. Eyes like I hadn't slept since taxes were filed. "I was a jerk," I said. "I drove too much. I kept thinking the more miles I put in, the more I'd matter." Bryn reached out, squeezed my hand. "Then fight now," she said. "Don't clock out this time." At 2:15 a.m., I tucked Simon into the pull-out couch. He was already snoring, one hand still gripping the backpack like it had secrets. I placed my phone face up on the coffee table like a guard dog, then texted my mom. "Call me early. It's serious." I turned off the lights, left the hallway dim so he wouldn't wake up scared, and stood there until the heater clicked off. The snow outside hadn't let up. It didn't look peaceful. It looked like a test. I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't, because it felt like the moment I did, someone else might try to rewrite what had already been said out loud. I stayed up. I just watched the heater kick on and off, listened to Simon breathe like he was learning how to do it without an audience. His backpack was still zipped up and clutched under his arm like he thought someone might try to take it. At 7:10, he stirred, blinked a few times, and pushed the blanket down to his knees. His hair was bent in two directions, like he'd slept hard but not deep. He sat up slow and asked, "Do I have school today?" The question wasn't nervous, just routine, like it was one of the few solid things he still knew how to say. "You've got us," I told him, kneeling beside the pullout. That's the plan for now. Bryn was already dressed. Hoodie, coat, hair up tight, keys in one hand, her phone in the other, like she'd been up longer than me, already reading laws or checklists. "We're taking him to his mother," she said, already halfway to the door. "Now." That was Bryn. Not loud, not dramatic, just built for the decisions most people dodge. I stood up slower, trying to match her focus, but still dragging yesterday in my limbs. Simon slid off the couch, socks half off, blinking like the light was too much too fast. I called St. Brie. Isidore's from the hallway. Colette's last name. Still the same one from back then. A receptionist with a too cheerful voice patched me through. "Oncology ward, room 527. "No flowers, please," she said. "Visiting starts at 8 sharp." We were out the door by 7:30. The drive was quiet. Low talk and radio static. Simon sat in the back seat, holding Bryn's hand. His thumb rubbed circles on her knuckle like muscle memory, like he'd been doing that for years to calm himself down. I kept checking the rearview mirror just to see their hands still locked together. It made my chest feel tight in a way I couldn't shake. I parked in the structure, level 2. Elevator smelled like antiseptic and panic. We stepped onto the 5th floor just as a nurse unlocked the sliding doors. The lights inside were too white. Everything buzzed. I knocked soft on 527, half expecting to get told to leave. What I heard instead was a paper-thin whisper. "Read." She looked like the version of Colette I'd been trying not to picture. Cheekbones sharper, eyes sunken, skin a weird shade of gray-yellow, a scarf tied tight around her head. She looked at me like she was measuring the time lost, not the time left. Simon didn't hesitate. He ran to her bedside like his legs had done it before. She sat up slow, like every muscle in her body was working under protest, but she managed to wrap her arms around him. She didn't wince, just closed her eyes and pressed her cheek to his head. Her hand reached out for mine without even looking. I gave it. She whispered, "That night, I wanted to keep you safe from them a little longer. I ran out of longer." Her voice didn't crack. It didn't need to. It came out like something final. Simon stood close to the bed, his hand on her blanket. "Brent said you were faking," he said, small but steady. He wasn't crying. He was just looking for the real line between truth and lies. "Cancer doesn't need your belief," she said, kissing his forehead. "It needs a doctor." The way she said it, it landed straight in my gut and stayed there. I told her, "We've got him. He's warm. He's safe. We'll do the paperwork, the court stuff, all the red tape, whatever keeps him out of the wind." She nodded like she'd been waiting to hear that since the second she wrote the letter. Her eyes softened. But her hands stayed clenched like she still had more to say. Then she rattled off 3 things fast. No hesitation, no room for argument. "Keep him out of Brent's hands. Keep him out of my parents' holiday card. Don't let my sketchbooks get thrown in a bin." Bryn, meanwhile, was in motion. She found the nurse at the station, asked for forms, got names, took notes like it was a listing she was prepping. I heard her confirm with the nurse. "Social worker assigned, Dana Riggs. Got it. Extension 2328. When she came back in, Colette's breathing had gotten shallower. She nodded toward the manila folder on the bedside tray. "Simon," she whispered, "give that to your dad." He handed it over carefully. Inside were 7 drawings. Dinosaurs in rain boots, a boy with a kite, animals curled into each other like puzzle pieces. Colette's art. Her lines still danced, still told stories even if her voice couldn't. "A museum of memory," she whispered, looking between me and Bryn. "But at home." I opened my mouth to say something. but my phone buzzed before the words came. Unknown number. I stared at it. Didn't answer. Didn't need to. I knew that smell. I knew that mess. Brent had picked up the scent of a fight. I silenced the phone, slid it in my pocket, and helped Simon adjust the blanket on his mom's legs. She was shivering now, even with the heater on high. She looked at me again, eyes glassy but clear. "You're not just a name on a letter anymore," she said. "You're here." "I should have been here sooner," I said. It slipped out, honest and ugly. She shook her head once. "Show up now. That's what counts." Bryn touched my shoulder gently. "We should let her rest." Colette nodded. Simon kissed her hand, and she smiled with her eyes closed. I looked back once at the machines and the two bright lights, and I hated every beep and screen in that room. But I didn't hate being in it. Not if it meant Simon saw someone show up for real. In the hallway, I asked Bryn, "How long do you think she has?" Bryn didn't guess. She just squeezed my hand and said, "Long enough to make it count if we don't waste it." As the elevator doors closed, I looked down at the drawings again. Her lines weren't weak. They were alive. Fierce even now. My phone buzzed again. Same number, same mistake waiting to happen. I didn't answer. I already knew what Brent wanted. He wanted to wedge himself into something that wasn't his to touch. Let him wait in the wind this time. I let it ring out. I already knew Brent was circling, like buzzards smell blood, like some people smell an angle. I shoved the thing in my pocket and followed Bryn down the hall. We stopped at the cafe on the first floor. Soup, crackers, water bottles. Bryn grabbed a little pudding cup for Simon. "Something sweet," she said. I nodded, just glad she was still holding the line when I felt like I was drifting from it. By the time we circled back up, it had been 15 minutes tops. I hit the street to drop the food and got tagged with a parking ticket while the wipers were half frozen. Figures. The fine was probably cheaper than a garage, and right now I didn't care. I slapped it on the dash and jogged back in. When I rounded the corner to 527, I heard his voice before I saw him. Loud, greasy, full of fake concern. She does this, pretends to be sick. That's her game. I stepped closer and saw him, mid-rant, leaning against the windowsill like he owned the damn place. Cheap puffer jacket with a busted zipper, red patch near the wrist. Ball cap with Lucky's stitched crooked on the front, like a prize from a bar trivia night. He smelled like bar mats and off-brand cologne. Even the hallway didn't want to hold on to his stink. Colette looked like a candle caught in a draft. Pale, shoulders hunched, eyes sunken even deeper since we left. But she was watching him like you'd watch a raccoon in your kitchen. Half fear, half fury. Brent spun toward me like he'd been waiting. "She's fine," he barked. "She's pulling this again. I've seen it. I've carried the whole damn load while she does this." I kept my voice even, not for him, but for Simon, who I spotted just behind Bryn's hip, eyes wide. "Keep yelling," I said, pointing at the corner camera. "It's got a longer memory than you do." Brent flicked his eyes up at the lens, and you could see it. The calculation. The pivot. He pulled his hands out of his pockets and switched gears so fast it made my teeth hurt. "You can't take that boy," he said, stepping in close, eyes hot, voice lower now but sharper. "I fed him. I picked him up from school. I've paid for everything while she drew cartoons and made excuses. You think you can just show up and play dad now?" "I'm not playing anything," I said, flat. "He's not your leverage." That one hit. He stepped back like I'd shoved him. The nurse, a short woman with box braids and zero tolerance, slid between us like it was her hallway. "Sir," she said to Brent, "you're creating disruption in a palliative care room." He tried to square up. "I have rights. I'm his stepfather. I've been in his life." She picked up the wall phone like she was asking for a box of gloves. "Security to 527, she said into the receiver, her voice calm as checkout. Brent glared at her, then at me, then back at Colette. His eyes were looking for someone to flip. No one moved. Simon clutched Bryn's sleeve, fingers white at the knuckles. She dropped to one knee, whispered into his hair like a lullaby. "We'll get hot chocolate after this, okay? With marshmallows. Extra ones." Simon gave a tiny nod, like that promise was a password he trusted. Security arrived with badges in bulk. Brent tried his last stand. "I've been raising him while she lays around making drama. You think this guy's gonna do better? He drives a cab. He's a dropout. Brent." Colette's voice was a breath, but it cut through. He turned. She was sitting up barely, but straight enough to own the moment. "Sign the temporary consent," she said. "Let Dana handle it. You don't get to hold him hostage to your luck." He stared at her, face twitching like he couldn't decide between rage and pity. "Luck's for the ones who show up," he spat, and then he stomped out. Right before the doors swung shut behind him, he threw me a look that said he wasn't done. Not a threat, a shortcut, a corner he planned to cut later. I exhaled for the first time in minutes. My chest felt like it had been holding a car in neutral too long. Simon leaned his head into Bryn's shoulder. Colette slumped back against the pillow, eyes half-lidded. The nurse checked her pulse, adjusted a drip, then nodded once like the room was back under control. Bryn stood, still holding Simon. "We're gonna head out," she said gently. "Let her rest." I stepped close to the bed again. Colette didn't look at me. She just whispered, "He'll come back. Brent doesn't quit when there's money on the line." I nodded. "Then we won't quit either." In the hallway, Simon asked quietly, "Why was he yelling?" Bryn answered first. "Because some people think yelling makes them right." I added, "We're gonna keep you safe. That's the only part that matters." Simon didn't say anything, but he slipped his hand into mine, and I held it like it was the only thing keeping both of us upright. Down in the lobby, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number for the lot on Oak Ridge. The attendant answered with a yawn in his voice. "Fleet lot, what's up?" "This is Reed, night driver. I need to know if your camera's got footage from last night, around 12:30. "We keep 48 hours, he said. "What are we looking for?" "Drop off. A kid left by the pay kiosk. Car was a silver Chevy sedan. Dented front panel. Can you check it?" "Yeah," he said. "Name's Mateo. I'll dig it up. You got a flash drive?" "I'll bring one tonight." "Cool," he said. "Might take a bit to find the exact time, but we got it." I hung up. First solid thing all day. We had an eye on Brent now, one that didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't buy his act. Bryn looked over. "What did he say?" "We've got footage," I said. "Timestamp. Whole thing." Her mouth tightened. Not a smile, but something close. We walked outside into the cold air, soup still warm in the bag, wind biting through our coats. "About time someone caught him in the frame," she said. "Now we burn it to drive," I said. "Then we burn it into court." And for the first time since the letter showed up in my hands, I felt like the ground under us wasn't shifting anymore. It was solid, just cold, and sharp, but solid. Mateo had the footage ready when I got there. He was sitting behind the glass booth with a gas station burrito in one hand and the playback controller in the other. Monitor looked like it hadn't been cleaned since dial-up internet. Dust on the screen, but the feed rolled back smooth. 12:37, he said, squinting at the timestamp. "That's what you said, right? End of your shift?" I nodded. "Yeah, let's see it." He tapped twice to slow the playback, and there it was. Brent's silver Chevy sedan, same dent on the passenger side I remembered from years of bad stories. You could tell he never fixed it on purpose, like some people keep damage around as a warning. The car stopped short at the edge of the pay station. Brent's door opened, and he got out fast, scanning like a guy who doesn't want to be seen but assumes he's safe anyway. He walked around, yanked the back door open, and half-dragged Simon out like a sack of laundry. The kid stumbled, righted himself, and grabbed his shark backpack off the seat. Brent shoved the strap onto his shoulder, pointed hard at the kiosk, and mouthed something we couldn't hear. He didn't look at the cameras once. That's the thing about guys like him. They think the whole world's their mirror. If they're not looking, no one is. Mateo hit pause. "That your boy?" he asked, not gently, just direct. I nodded once. He clicked through a menu, burned the clip to a flash drive I'd brought, and then printed a still frame. Simon by the kiosk, backpack on. Brent's car just pulling away. Timestamp and the Oak Ridge lot logo on the bottom corner like a signature. "You want audio?" Mateo asked. "No mics on your lot, right?" "Nope, just pics." "Pictures are louder." I took the drive and the still, slipped them into my coat, and turned toward the lot exit. My phone lit up just as I hit the sidewalk. Private number. I didn't want to answer. I did anyway. "Reed," Brent said, like we were co-workers at some reunion no one wanted. "Man, we got off on the wrong foot. Let's be real. We can work something out here." I didn't answer. He kept talking. "Couple grand. You get your little Hallmark ending." I stepped back. No more drama. Clean break. You know he's money, right? State stuff. Tax stuff. They don't tell you that up front, but it's real. "You're trying to monetize a child," I said. My voice didn't even lift. It just landed like a brick. "You call it what you want. I call it not being stupid. Here's how this goes," I said. "You stay away from the hospital. You stay away from our place. The social worker deals with you now, and if I get another call like this, I send this video to Dana, then to a judge." "Come on, man, I hung up. I wasn't giving him another syllable of airtime. 2 neighborhoods over, I pulled into my mom's driveway. Irene opened the door before I knocked. Dish towel still hanging from her shoulder, eyes sharp like she'd been tracking the weather and trouble both since sunrise. She looked at me, then at Simon behind me, backpack hugged to his chest. "This him?" she asked. "Yeah." She didn't blink. She just knelt down, fixed his scarf, and said, "My apple cake doesn't last an hour at any table with kids. You like cake, Simon?" He gave her a half smile, crooked and quiet. Same one I used to give when someone offered me something without asking what I'd done to deserve it. Inside, she poured him juice and gave him an apple slice with cinnamon on it like it was normal. She didn't ask why he was here. She waited until he was on the couch, flipping through a picture book she'd pulled from somewhere. Then she pointed at the envelope under my arm. "Show me." I handed her the still frame. She stared at it a long time. "This was last night?" she asked. 12:37 a.m. She nodded like she was filing it under proof. Not hope, not story, just something that holds up under pressure. "Men like him," she said, "they sell the truth in small pieces, buy it back whole when it suits them." I told her the fast version. Colette, the hospital, Brent at the door trying to gaslight the entire floor. "I know the type," she said, taking another look at Simon. "And I know the judge type, too. Bring this to anyone with a badge or a robe. Don't let it get buried in emotion. Let it land like a fact. On the way out." Bryn texted, "Dana can see us tomorrow at 9:50. Bring ID, note, photo, anything with dates." I texted back, "We've got it all, even the piece of dirt no one asked for." That night, the 3 of us sat at the coffee table, which had turned into something like a command center. Simon sat cross-legged on the floor with crayons and loose paper. He drew a wolf in a sweater, red scarf flying off its shoulders, snow under its paws. "What's his name?" Bryn asked. Simon shrugged. "I don't know yet." "Want to tape it on the wall?" He nodded. I slipped Colette's folder out of my bag, opened the sleeves. 7 drawings. Her lines, her colors. Bryn brought over plastic sheet protectors and Sharpies. We labeled one binder with notes, the other no notes. She wrote in block letters on the front, "Museum of Memory." I looked at her handwriting, sharp and clear. Then I looked at the wolf drawing Simon had stuck to the wall beside it. Something clicked, and I didn't know if it was the room, or the warmth, or the way Bryn was humming some dumb tune under her breath. But something in me, some broken engine light part, slid back into place. And I realized it wasn't Simon who needed saving tonight. It was me. We got back to St. Isidore's with 15 minutes left on visiting hours. I swear room 527 had shrunk. The machines felt closer, like they were creeping in around her. Colette looked smaller too, thinner than she had that morning, bones sharper under the skin, but she smiled when she saw us. One of those smiles people give when it costs them something. Simon walked in first, like the air in that room belonged to him. Bryn followed, holding the memory folder we'd built. I hung back by the door, not wanting to fill the space until I was invited into it. Colette patted the edge of the bed, the signal she always used when she wanted closeness without asking out loud. She asked for water first. Bryn helped her sip from a straw. Then Colette looked at me, eyes glassy, but locked in. "Tell me what he did," she said, voice rough like dry leaves. I told her. The lot, the time, the footage. How Brent shoved Simon toward a pay kiosk like it was a damn babysitter. Her jaw clenched like she wanted to tear something off the bone. She didn't speak for a full minute. "My parents still send flowers," she said finally. "Cards with crap like strength is a choice, or faith fights back. But the return addresses are law firms. They want the optics of a grandchild, not the kid. They never wanted me to draw, Reed. They wanted me to host." I didn't know what to say to that. I'd spent years convincing myself she left because I wasn't enough. Turns out she ran because she was too much for them, and didn't want me swallowed in the fallout. Bryn stepped forward then. "I draw," she said, gentle but firm. "Kids' stuff mostly, but I know how to keep sketchbooks safe. I can catalog them, scan them, curate a digital archive, make sure your work stays alive in his life." Colette's fingers found Bryn's like they'd been doing it for years. "Please," she whispered, "make a museum of memory, not sad, a real one, at home." Bryn nodded once, just once, but I knew what that nod meant. It wasn't a maybe. It was a promise written in ink. Simon climbed up onto the side of the bed, careful not to tug her tubes. He held up his latest drawing, a wolf in a red sweater with a striped scarf trailing behind it. He said, "I think I'll call him Mom's friend." Colette let out a wheezy, dry laugh. "He looks loyal," she said. "Don't let him be lonely." She leaned back after that, eyelids fluttering, not asleep, but past her limit. Bryn pulled the blanket up gently and sat down by the window. I joined her, elbows on knees, watching the machines do what they could with the time she had left. "I used to think if I just worked hard enough," I said quietly. "If I saved enough money, got my act together, she'd come back. I kept my head down and figured later would fix it." Bryn didn't look at me, just stared out the window where snow had started falling again. "You can't save a person with later," she said. "You can only show up now." She didn't say it to cut me. She said it to keep me from cutting myself. Colette stirred again, her voice barely above breath. "I need a favor," she said. "A weird one." I got up and leaned close. "Leave me a voicemail," she said. "Something Simon can play later. Something like what you say in the car." I smiled. That part was easy. "Seatbelts," I said. "Snacks in the glove box. Radio stays on oldies if you're with me. No kicking the back of my seat unless you're escaping a zombie." She smiled with her eyes closed like she could already hear it. The doctor came in then. "Clipboard?" Polite nod. That clinical rhythm in his voice that always means one thing. They've switched from fighting to counting. Words like palliative, comfort focus, and days, not weeks, floated into the air like dust no one wanted to breathe. Colette didn't flinch. She just reached for my hand. "She faded," she whispered. The promise didn't. That line landed in my head like a nail, sharp, final, true. Before he left, the doctor asked if she had final instructions. She didn't hesitate. Looked at me and said, "Swear again. Say it so I can believe it." I didn't blink. "Keep him out of Brent's hands," she said. Don't let my parents take him for their holiday card. I gripped her hand tighter and leaned close. He's not for anyone's card, I said. He's not a photo op. He's your son, and now he's mine too. She sighed like relief had been held back behind her ribs and finally got to slip through. We stayed another 10 minutes. Simon hummed to himself while Bryn rearranged the corner of the room. She fixed the blinds, straightened the vase of wilting flowers, cleared the food tray. She couldn't fix Colette, but she made the space feel less like a waiting room and more like a bedroom someone loved. When we finally stepped into the hallway, Simon looked up at me with that same lopsided expression Colette used to make when she was about to ask for something bold. Are we coming back tomorrow? Yes, I said, twice if they let us. He nodded, watching the snow layer the tops of parked cars through the glass. Okay, he said, like he'd been holding his breath since we arrived. We walked out into the cold again, but something about the silence felt earned this time, like it was wrapping around us on purpose. Bryn didn't ask if I was sure. She just brushed my jacket collar down, handed me the file folder, and said, "Let's not give them more than the weather and the facts." That's how she handles open houses and old money. Firm handshake, full eye contact, nothing extra. Their house sat on a ridge like it thought it was better than gravity. White columns, clean lines, driveway you couldn't park on without permission. I parked anyway. If they wanted to come out and tow me, they could do it in front of a judge. Simon stayed with Irene. She handed him a bucket of Legos, kissed his head like he'd always been there, and told me, "Don't let them smile while they steal." We walked up together. Their porch was stone, cold even through my boots. Meredith opened the door before we knocked, like she'd been watching the cameras and timing it for effect. She wore a white wool coat and held a porcelain cup like it was made of thread. "Reed," she said, using my name like it tasted like vinegar. "We're glad you came." "I didn't come to be glad," I said. "I came to hear you out before we go through the agency." She stepped aside. "We'll talk on the porch. More comfortable for everyone." Translation: "You don't get to sit on our chairs." Gordon followed her out, scarf over one shoulder like he was posing for a legacy portrait. He looked like he'd just come from a board meeting where people said words like merger and portfolio without blinking. He offered us tea. Bryn shook her head. I took the cup and didn't drink it. Meredith went first. "We're prepared to offer a generous monthly stipend," she said, hands folded like a news anchor. "If you'll agree to formal guardianship under our umbrella." Bryn didn't look at her. She looked at me. "Translation," she said. "They want the title, not the shift." Gordon cleared his throat. "Let's speak plainly. Simon deserves stability, education, proper circles." He said circles like he meant private schools and photo ops, like we were the wrong geometry. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Simon likes pancakes on Thursdays. He eats the crusts first. He calls dinosaurs dudes with tails. I don't own a tux. We keep ketchup in the fridge. That's our circle." Gordon smiled like he was explaining something to a dog that didn't quite understand. "We have people for that," he said. I felt my jaw lock. Bryn touched my back once, and I let the anger pass like a train. "He's not for your holiday card," I said. "Pick what looks good. We'll pick what's good for him." Meredith softened her voice like she was switching from negotiations to lullabies. "We're family, Reed. We should be united." I pulled the still photo from my coat and laid it gently on their marble table. Brent, frozen mid-step, Simon by the kiosk. Timestamp, logo, proof. "Your unity left him at a parking gate at 12:37 a.m., I said. Gordon barely glanced at the photo. He blinked like he was bored and cleared his throat again. "We warned her about Brent," he said. "We always told her he wasn't fit." "You warned her," I said, then locked the doors after she left. "You don't get to wash your hands with hindsight." Meredith held the silence a second longer than needed. "You know," she said, It's easy to paint villains when you need leverage. We sent flowers. We asked to help. No, Bryn said. You asked to control. I didn't have to say anything else. She'd stripped it down in 4 words. Bryn pulled a card from her pocket and slid it across the table. All contact goes through social worker and counsel from now on. We'll see you at the agency review. Meredith didn't take the card. Gordon did. He flipped it once, tucked it in his coat without a word. Meredith's face dropped a shade. You'll regret making this adversarial. I stood. What I regret is not standing up sooner. I looked at Gordon. What I regret is letting your money sit between me and someone I loved. That's not happening twice. They didn't walk us out. Of course they didn't. Bryn stepped off the porch like she'd just closed escrow. Back straight, head high. We got in the car. My hands were shaking. I started the engine and turned the heat up full. They'll lawyer up hard, Bryn said, staring out the windshield. Let them, I said. I'm tired of being told where my place is. The driveway curved like it didn't want us to leave quietly. I cranked the wheel sharp and didn't look back. The conference room looked like a DMV grew teeth. Cheap laminate table. Clock that ticked a half-second louder than it should. Chairs just uncomfortable enough to make sure no one got too relaxed. Dana Riggs sat at the head of it, pen already tapping, folders stacked in front of her like she'd been waiting for this moment all week. She didn't raise her voice, didn't look tired, just calm, sharp, like a traffic cop who knew every shortcut, every crash, and which drivers lied most often. We sat on one side, me, Bryn, Irene, and Simon. His shark backpack sat upright on the floor like it was listening too. On the other side sat Meredith and Gordon, too polished for the furniture, and a lawyer named Aubrey, who wore pearl earrings and an expression like she'd rather be anywhere richer. Brent slid in late, 5 minutes after the start time, eyes red, a claims form sticking halfway out of his pocket like a receipt from the wrong kind of bet. Dana started with introductions. I gave my name. Bryn gave hers. Irene nodded. Simon whispered his own, barely loud enough to carry across the table. Brent sat up like someone had just given him a mic. I'm the stepfather, he said, puffing it out like a title. I've raised him for 5 years while she played artist and cried wolf. Then he looked straight at me. He doesn't know this guy. Reed came out of nowhere. He's confusing the boy. Just showing up like this? It's chaos. Colette, she's always worn the hospital gown when she wanted attention. Cancer doesn't take votes, I said, low and direct. It needs a doctor. Brent snorted and pulled a crumpled pamphlet out of his jacket pocket like that proved something. I didn't look at it. Neither did Dana. Aubrey stepped in with a soft voice meant to sound collaborative. We're not here to escalate conflict. We all want what's best for the child. That said, Mr. Reed, you work nights, correct? I nodded. Yeah, I do. Not glamorous work, but solid. She tilted her head like she was talking to a dishwasher she was about to return. Where does that leave the child, practically speaking? I've already adjusted my schedule, I said. Fewer night shifts. My mother's retired and lives close. Bryn's schedule is flexible. We make it work. It's not the Hamptons, but he's warm, fed, and loved. Meredith chimed in with that practiced smile of hers, the one that could freeze tea. We can provide the environment he's accustomed to. I looked down at Simon's sneakers, frayed Velcro, duct tape on the side. Accustomed to? I said. He hasn't known comfort in years. You think that starts with cashmere and square footage? Dana raised a hand, not to stop us, but to redirect. Do you have documentation? She asked. Bryn nudged me gently. I pulled the folder from my bag, opened it slow, and slid the first page across. The photo. Me and Colette, years younger. Her handwriting on the back. This is your father. Then the second item. The still photo from the lot. Brent's silver Chevy. Simon standing at the kiosk. The timestamp shining like an alarm. Brent leaned forward and scoffed. That could be anywhere. That could be anybody. I reached down, pulled the flash drive from my pocket, and handed it to Dana. Play it. She nodded at the clerk beside her, who plugged it into the wall monitor. Pixel snow filled the screen, timestamp blinking at the bottom. The silver Chevy pulled into frame, paused, door opened. Brent stepped out. Simon followed, backpack shoved into his hands. Brent pointed at the kiosk, turned, and drove off. Didn't glance back once. The room stayed silent except for Brent's breath catching in his throat. I looked straight at him. Keep yelling. The lens doesn't blink, and it doesn't drink. He opened his mouth to argue again, but Dana raised a single finger. Enough. Brent muttered. I wasn't abandoning. I was... Just what? Bryn said, her voice flat as drywall. Just leaving him at a gate so you could go play roulette? Meredith hissed at Brent. Stop talking. But he didn't listen. He knocked over a plastic water cup and cussed under his breath. Dana let the silence hang, heavy and sharp. Then she turned to her notes and read like it was already decided. Effective immediately, protective placement granted, no unsupervised contact for Brent. Supervised visitation for grandparents with the child's consent. Formal custody pending court. Aubrey started to object, but Dana cut her off without looking up. We're not done. Gordon cleared his throat. Pivoted like he was used to meetings where tone changed things. Our objection is not with the boy being safe, he said. It's about legal guardianship. We believe oversight by our family is in Simon's long-term interest. Dana didn't respond to him. She looked at Simon. Simon, do you want to share where you'd like to live right now? Simon's feet swung under his chair. He looked at me, then at Bryn, then at Meredith's stiff smile and Gordon's long blink. With my dad and Bryn, he said. They kept me warm. Meredith reached out like she was going to say something soft, but Simon leaned into me and grabbed my hand. And that was that. Dana nodded. Placement confirmed. We'll reconvene in 12 days for court. Everyone started gathering papers. Chairs squeaked. Brent muttered something about state checks and Meals on Wheels for dads. I pulled out my phone, opened my call log, and slid it to Dana. These are texts and voicemails, I said. He's trying to sell access to the kid for cash. Dana took it with one hand and marked a note with the other. Thank you. Bryn tugged my sleeve as we passed the vending machines. Father isn't a medal, she said. It's a shift with no clock out. I laughed, low. Good thing I don't mind overtime. We got home from the hearing and didn't talk much. No loud celebration, no collapse. Just that quiet middle ground where you're too wired to rest but too drained to think. Simon kicked off his shoes, walked to the pullout like muscle memory, and froze when he saw what we'd done. The pullout was gone. In its place stood a real twin bed, wooden frame Bryn had found secondhand and sanded herself. New sheets, blue with rockets. Desk made from a flea market table, legs uneven but shimmed with old coasters. A shelf hung above it with tiny nails that didn't quite sit flush. On it were 7 frames, Colette's sketches. Bryn had written Museum of Memory on a cut-up cereal box and clipped it to the shelf with a clothespin the size of her thumb. Simon stood still for a second, then reached up and touched the tag. This is mine? He asked. All yours, I said, including the crooked shelf. He didn't smile big. He smiled quiet, like it was heavy but good. Irene started coming over 3 afternoons a week after that. Same way she used to drop sandwiches at the lot when I first got hired. Back when I thought working nights meant I was moving forward. Now she brought apple slices and a deck of cards. She taught Simon how to peel an apple without breaking the spiral. By day 3, he called her Grammy, and she pretended not to cry while she wiped the counter like it was dusty. Bryn took over part of the dining table with paperwork, sticky notes, and the kind of timelines that could hold up under questioning. Every note she wrote looked like it belonged in a courtroom exhibit. I watched her underline one sentence in red, then tap her pen twice before writing, Submit by Thursday 10 a.m. in the margin. Cal, my dispatcher, gave me grief for dropping bar shifts. Night money makes your rent, he said, chewing a pen cap like it owed him back pay. You got a hobby now or what? I've got mornings to be there for, I said. Give me more airport runs, less midnight puke. He grunted. You ain't a hero for raising your kid. Didn't ask to be, I said. Just need the shift changes. He made me wait 2 full minutes before saying, Fine, you got 'em. Bryn picked up a new client, guy who ran a coffee shop 3 blocks down. He told her, in the middle of signing papers, that Meredith's chain had squeezed him on his last lease. She helped him relocate near the farmer's market and cut him a deal. We called it coincidence out loud. Quietly, I didn't mind the kind of karma that drives itself. Brent called twice from numbers I didn't recognize. First time I let it ring. Second time I answered, didn't speak, just listened. Heard chips crunching, music in the background, and him muttering, "He owes me." I blocked both and sent the voicemails to Dana with the message, "He's fishing." She replied with one word, "Logged." Meredith's attorney filed a petition for guardianship in the interest of stability. Ours, Keisha Binder, a woman who walked like she'd fought her way through 3 cities and didn't plan on losing in this one, filed back hard. The footage, the photo, the note from Colette, the hospital's statement about Brent's outburst in the ward. Binder knew where to hit and when. I got a text from a guy I used to share shift blocks with. Mike, the one with the busted Taurus and too many opinions. He said, Brent owes a guy called Victor with the hat $900. Sportsbook stuff. Says he'll pay when court settles. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Colette's room was dimmer every time we visited. Her eyes looked more tired, her voice smaller, but she still lit up when Simon handed her a new drawing. Bryn started labeling the backs. Date, title, one-line memory. It became rhythm. April 9th, Red Wolf in the Rain. She said it reminded her of a coat she once had. Bryn's handwriting lined the bedside tray like a second heartbeat. The nurses noticed. One of them said, "You all make this place quieter. Less like dying. More like closing a book, right?" At night, I caught myself watching Simon more than the TV. He lined up toy cars in color order. He built towers, then knocked them down just to build again. The apartment got quiet in a way I didn't know I'd missed. The TV stayed low. The radiator clanked like it always did. But now it felt like background noise instead of a warning. The pull of the street, the rhythm of bar fights and cheap fares, it didn't tug at me like it used to. I started leaving my keys in a bowl by the door. I'd drop them in, sit on the floor, and build whatever Simon handed me. A rocket, a garage, a bed that would never fold up again. On the fridge, under a taxi-shaped magnet, sat a printout from the agency. Custody review hearing, 12 days, 12 days. Not just a countdown, a checkpoint, a line in the sand we'd already started crossing. The snow started just after lunch. Fat flakes, no wind, the kind that stick to the window like the world hit pause. Simon pressed his nose to the glass and said, "It's like TV, but slower." He wasn't wrong. Bryn rolled up her sleeves and set out a bowl. The flour bag, sugar, vanilla, all of it. Her hair was up in a pencil again, like always, and she already had a smudge of something on her cheek before she even cracked an egg. "You ready to bake?" she asked. Simon nodded so hard his bangs bounced. "I've been ready since Thursday." I wiped the counter, flipped the radio on, volume low, just swing and soft static. The kitchen smelled like butter and old heat. Bryn showed him how to level a measuring cup with the back of a knife. He did it fast, dumped it into the bowl, then glanced up like he'd broken a rule. She gave him a little nod. "Perfect," she said. He sat up straighter, like someone had just tied a string from his shoulder blades to the ceiling. They moved through the ingredients: butter, sugar, cracked eggs. He sniffed the vanilla, made a face like it bit him. Bryn laughed. "Some good things stink up close." He looked at me like he wanted a second opinion. "She's right," I said. "Always is." He grinned and reached for the sugar jar. His hand left prints in the powder. fingers dusted white like he'd been building little snowbanks. His wrist bumped the bowl, but he caught it in time. Snow at the window, dough on his hands. And then, "Mom, is this enough sugar?" He didn't mean to land the punch like that. He wasn't testing her, or me. He just said it because it fit, because the room made it feel okay. Bryn blinked fast, but she didn't flinch. She placed her hand over his on the jar, gentle but sure. "Yeah, kiddo," she said. "That's enough." I didn't move. Just stood there and let that word ring in the quiet. I wasn't some bright-eyed kid or miracle parent. I was a tired man who used to drive circles thinking that meant progress. Fatherhood wasn't a victory flag. It was dishes. It was mittens. It was being steady enough that a boy could ask dumb questions and not get burned. I slid the first tray in the oven. The heat came out soft. Kissed my knuckles as I leaned on the counter and closed the door. I watched the timer count down like it was a slow drum. Then Irene knocked. 2 taps and a pause, like always. She walked in with a jam jar full of sprinkles and a coat dusted in snow. "Fancy ones," she said, "from the discount bin. You won't know the difference once they melt." We ate the cookies too soon. Burned tongues and sticky fingers. Simon held one with both hands like it was treasure. Bryn snapped a picture on her phone, but she didn't say anything about it, just captured it quietly. He walked over to the memory museum and pulled 2 dinosaur stickers from his pocket. One big, one small. He stuck the big one on the sign, then the small one underneath. He said, "The big one watches the little one, so the drawings don't get lonely." I didn't answer. Couldn't. Just nodded and turned toward the window. Outside, the snow kept falling slow and soft, like the world had finally decided not to rush us. I looked at that glass, at my reflection in it, layered over the white outside, and I told myself something I should have said a long time ago. The end of shift isn't the end of anything. It's just when you go inside, wash your hands, and get ready for the next piece of work that actually matters. What would you have done if a child suddenly showed up in your life with a note saying he was yours? Share your answer or just drop a comment if you like this story. Even just writing "good story" helps us a lot. And if it resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe. It's only one click for you, but it means the world to us.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.